The United States government owns 261 million ounces of gold. It is the largest gold reserve in the world, and on the official books, every single ounce is valued at $42.22. Gold traded above $5,000 an ounce this month. So why does the United States Treasury still price its own gold at a number that has not changed since 1973? That gap between the official price and the real price is worth more than $1 trillion. And what happens when that gap is finally closed could reshape the entire financial system. For most of your life, you have been told that the monetary system works. Dollars are stable. The government manages the economy responsibly. Gold is a relic, something your grandparents cared about, and the modern world has moved past it. That story was easier to believe when the national debt was $5 trillion. Today, it is over $36 trillion. $9 trillion of that must be refinanced this year alone, and the interest payments on that debt now exceed what the government spends on national defense. The system did not just develop a crack. The foundation shifted, and nobody updated the blueprints. Now here is where this gets interesting. In 1971, President Nixon severed the last link between the dollar and gold. The official price at the time was $35 per ounce. 2 years later, it was adjusted to $42.22, and then it was never changed again. For over 50 years, the United States government has carried 8,133 metric tons of gold on its balance sheet, at a price that has nothing to do with reality. Today, gold sits above $5,000 per ounce. That means the Treasury's gold is officially worth about $11 billion, but its actual market value is closer to $750 billion. That is not an accounting error. That is a deliberate choice. And the people who made that choice are now talking about reversing it. In 2025, Senator Cynthia Lummis introduced the Bitcoin Act. Most people focused on the headline, the creation of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But buried in Section 9 of that bill is something far more significant. It directs the Federal Reserve to return its outstanding gold certificates to the Treasury, which would then reissue them at current market prices. In plain language, the government would officially acknowledge that its gold is worth what it is actually worth. That single accounting change would create over $1 trillion in the Treasury General Account, overnight, without raising taxes, without selling a single ounce of gold. And this is not some fringe idea. Here is Judy Shelton, former Federal Reserve nominee under President Trump, and the author of Good as Gold, explaining exactly what she is proposing. Listen closely.
I'm thinking if we could issue, and I'm even proposing a 50-year Treasury bond, which is something that President Trump has long wanted to do, to go beyond our Treasury 30-year bond, which is currently the longest. But it would be the first time that there were any official link between the value of the US dollar and gold since the Bretton Woods system ended under President Nixon 54 years ago in 1971. And the idea would be that people could purchase.
What she just described would be the first official link between the dollar and gold since Bretton Woods collapsed in 1971. A 50-year gold-backed treasury bond. That is not a theory. That is a policy proposal from someone who was nearly confirmed to the Federal Reserve Board. But here is the part that most people miss entirely. The revaluation is not just about the United States. It is about what the rest of the world has already started doing, without waiting for permission. Central banks around the world have been buying gold at record pace for 3 consecutive years. China alone has added over 300 tons since 2022. Russia, India, Poland, Turkey, they are all aggressively accumulating. And it is not just gold buying. India's central bank is now pushing BRICS nations to create a linked digital currency system for cross-border trade. The Enbridge platform has already processed over $55 billion in transactions, completely outside the dollar system. This is not a plan. It is already operational. Here is Luke Gromen, founder of FFTT and one of the sharpest macro minds in the world, explaining exactly how the revaluation would work. Listen closely.
Treasury calls up Powell. Besson calls up Powell, says, okay, revalue it from 42 to 10,000. It's going to put, mechanically, you can find this in the Financial Accounting Manual for Federal Reserve Banks. It's a public document online, section 2.10. Treasury can call the Fed and say, revalue the gold. It mechanically creates a deposit right into the Treasury General Account, or TGA. It's literally money creation using the gold. The Besson can do pretty much whatever he wants with. At 10,000, it's $2.5 trillion. At 20,000, it's $5 trillion. $5 trillion, you could buy back a lot of the Treasury money.
A single phone call. Section 2.10 of the Federal Reserve's own accounting manual. The mechanism already exists. The only question is when they use it. And the rest of the world is not waiting. Gold has already overtaken US Treasuries as the dominant reserve asset in foreign central banks. A 30-year trend just reversed. The world is not waiting for Washington to revalue gold. It is already repricing it, one central bank at a time. So here is the question you should be asking. If the government revalues its gold and creates $1 trillion in a treasury account, where does that value come from? It comes from the same place all new money comes from. It is created by expanding the monetary base. And when the money supply expands without a corresponding increase in economic output, the purchasing power of every dollar already in existence goes down. This is not fear-mongering. This is arithmetic. The $42 gold price was not an accident. It was a cap, a way of keeping the official books balanced while the real economy diverged from the numbers. Removing that cap releases pressure that has been building for half a century. The belief you need to let go of is this: the dollar is not a store of value. It was never designed to be one, not since 1971. It is a unit of account that loses purchasing power every single year, by design. Your parents could buy a house for $30,000. Your grandparents could fill a grocery cart for $10,000. Those prices did not go up because food and housing got better. They went up because the dollar got weaker. And that trend is accelerating. What is coming next? Whether it is gold revaluation, CBDC rollout, or stablecoin expansion, every one of these paths leads to more currency creation and less purchasing power for the unprepared. The people who understand this are not panicking. They are positioning. The smart money, the central banks, the sovereign wealth funds, they started repositioning years ago while the public was still being told that gold was a barbaric relic and Bitcoin was tulip mania. The window between when institutions act and when the public catches on is where the largest transfers of wealth in history happen. You do not need to go all in on anything, but you need to understand the forces at work. When the Treasury revalues gold, it is not making you richer. It is acknowledging that the dollars in your bank account have already lost the value you thought they had. Start with understanding, then move to action. Own assets that cannot be printed. Diversify across jurisdictions. Pay attention to what central banks are doing, not what they are saying. This is bigger than gold. This is about the architecture of the global financial system being rebuilt while most people are still using the old map. The BRICS nations are building alternative payment rails. India is pushing a cross-border digital currency. The United States is racing to stay relevant by anchoring the dollar to real assets again. Within the next 18 months, I believe the United States will officially revalue its gold reserves. When that happens, every asset priced in dollars will need to be repriced. The question is not if, but when, and whether you understood the signal before the crowd. 50 years of deliberately undervaluing gold. $36 trillion in debt. A world that is quietly moving away from paper promises and back to hard assets. This is not a theory. The legislation is written. The central banks are buying. The math does not lie. The old rules are being rewritten. The only question that matters now is whether you rewrote yours first. Wealth, freedom, sovereignty.